Hello, I'm Lamisila Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. I'm just laughing because I'm in my garage and I can see my garage door. Anyway, so the title of this video is A Culture of Economic Consciousness, the Power in Our Choices. Okay, so like I said before, how do you talk about establishing a culture of mental health without saying the words mental health? Because a lot of people get very uncomfortable when you start talking about mental health, okay? And some people just see it as a complete swear word. Other people will talk about how people are negatively influenced by spiritual beings and, things like that. So in a way, they kind of absolving the person of choices that they make, absolving the society and the families that they grew up of the choices that they've made, So this is why I say the power in our choices, because I believe that when we start talking about our choices, we necessarily have to interrogate the state of our mental health. Okay. So, I think that there's a lot of choices that we make every day, obviously, but I think that there are three main choices, or not three main choices, but there are three choices that I think are quite important that we should be making every day as a way of establishing this culture of economic consciousness. Because I've said before that at the core of a culture of economic consciousness is increasing our value as human beings and our capacity to fulfill the purpose for which we came to this planet. Okay. And obviously fulfilling the purposes that for which we came to this planet involves taking care of our bodies, taking care of our health, physical, spiritual, mental, and economic health, ensuring that our relationships with people increase their value and increase our value. So all these things require us to have a culture, a worldview, which will inspire us to behave in ways that create a reality which is for our highest good and the highest good of all the people that we encounter. So, as the observational maxim of Ubuntu says, Umuntu ungumuntu ngabantu. So it means a person is because of and through other people. Okay. So it's an observational maxim. People normally seem to think that it's a pronouncement which is saying that as human beings we are good for each other, okay, and that we should take care of each other because that's the good thing to do. It's not necessarily saying that. It's observing that through other people is how we each develop, okay. And now, because of that, but then obviously later, like expanding on that, because of the culture that birthed the Ubuntu philosophy, it was a very deeply spiritual culture in terms of a spirituality that's aligned with the creator. And so it was very much concerned with people doing their best and being the best that they could be. Okay. So that's why there's always this assumption that it's inherently a maxim which is calling for positive behavior. But at its essence, it's saying this is how things are. It's like a scientific observation of the human condition. Okay, so in line with that, I think the three choices that we can make in order to establish a culture of economic consciousness is: 1, choose to be a good parent; 2, choose to be a good partner. And this means like whether romantically, friendship-wise, in business, okay, as a family member. And then 3, choose to be the best friend to yourself. Now, how does mental health come into this? Well, in order to make these choices, you need to interrogate your capacity to be a good parent, partner, and friend to yourself. Okay, because also we have to define what we mean by good. Okay, like I was saying in a previous video, when you look at those who worship a social god who's focused on externalities, and those who worship a creator aligned God, or the creator who's concerned with the internal world of the devotee, right? with the social god, right? The social gods will be very impressed by a man whose family comes to church every day and everyone is well dressed and they all sit in a row quietly during church and they give however much money to the church every week, etc., etc. They do all the external things that make them look like a good, pious family. The social god system is not interested in what's going on in that house. Okay, they don't care that that dude after church will get drunk and proceed to abuse his family. Okay, they're not interested in that. That's the social god. So, in line with a culture of economic consciousness, my belief is that we have to become creator aligned individuals, okay, wherein our internal world is of maximum importance. And this is where mental health comes into things, because I do believe that in order to be a good parent, partner, and friend to yourself, you have to be on the lookout for opportunities to increase your own inner authenticity and to increase the capacity of the people around you, their capacity to be their authentic selves. Okay. And there's a lot of things that we have learned in our culture, in our society, which really do a lot to undermine our capacity to be good parents, partners, and friends to ourselves. And this is because largely, like I've said before, we live in a civilization that is devotees to social gods, where it's all about externalities and very little heed is paid to people's psyches, emotions, and their spirits. Okay. So, in line with being a good parent, I think this goes beyond just the obvious of being a parent, but it's, to interrogate why you're having children. You know what I'm saying? Why are you bringing this human being into the world? Is it because you want to? And is it because you have the capacity to take care of this person until they reach adulthood? If you don't have that capacity, you really need to ask yourself why you're having these children, because there is absolutely nothing more tragic than the waste of a human life that occurs when a child is not taken care of properly. Okay. And the fact that we in a world where we have such a thing, such a category of human being as an unwanted child, just speaks volumes to how messed up our society is. I mean, that's like taking the most beautiful liquid that gives you health and vitality, and it looks beautiful and it tastes beautiful and it's in a beautiful glass vial, and smashing it against the wall. That's the capacity of, that's the extent of the tragedy when we have such a thing as unwanted child. This child is a soul that comes from the Creator. It is absolutely beautiful and pure when it is born and remains so in the right hands. And, who knows what incredible mission this soul has to fulfill on this planet. But then when it's born to parents who don't want it, and sometimes they end up in orphanages or even worse, things that befall unwanted children. What a waste. And the collective human consciousness feels that tragedy and bears that tragedy. So it's not a small thing for people to have children when they don't want them. Okay, so this is an extremely important issue. The most valuable people are our children, and if we are going to waste them and disrespect them the way we do, creating a culture of economic consciousness is pretty much impossible. So I'm going to carry on in part 2 about the other two choices.